The snowball strategy, I love the snowball strategy. The snowball is you buy your first place that you're going to live in. You get a really, really attractive mortgage because the best mortgages are for owner occupants. So you get the great mortgage, and then in a year or 2 years you decide to move, but you keep it. Now the best way to execute the snowball strategy is actually with 2-family houses. So you buy your first place. It's got one nice apartment upstairs, one crappy apartment downstairs, right? You live in the crappy one, ideally, when you're young. The rent you generate from the upstairs apartment is going to pay most of your mortgage and taxes, if not all of it. So you might be living rent-free or really subsidized by the rental. After you're done with that, you buy the next 2-family maybe, but you keep everything along the way. Start the process of researching now, start the process of saving now, but be strategic about how you approach it so that things like this have a way of helping you grow something faster because you're literally leveraging the cost to put a roof over your own head as part of the strategy.
What are some creative ways you've negotiated deals?
Offer more money.
Especially right now. That makes sense. Market rates.
And I'm not even kidding. All right. My creative way of getting deals that I want is that I don't try to get steals on things that I think are great investments. Because if you think something's a great investment, like really a great investment, then you have to find a moron who owns a property that's a great investment and doesn't know it. Everybody's got access to all the data on what property values are. And so if somebody is halfway knowledgeable, they're not going to give you a steal in a strong market. And so the strategy, the creativity is being more creative about your investment thesis than me going to buy cheap houses under value. Like that's not a creative strategy, okay?
Yeah. All right, so people watching is just a way of talking about the nature of trying to forecast places where demand is going to be especially strong. And it becomes very common sense. And so you start looking around and you notice there's traffic on certain highways that didn't used to be there. Some cities, they have a ring of suburbs where they didn't all develop equally, right? So you find the ones that are a little behind the others. And you watch and you see Home Depot and Lowe's open up stores. You say, hey, wait, what's going on? They know something, right? You start paying attention to where people are going, why they're going there, get a feel for will that continue. And what you're essentially doing is trying to invest in advance of the progress, right? So if people are moving in a certain direction, it happens at a glacial pace, you can jump out ahead of it, make your investment, and then the demand for your investment goes up. Thereby, the value of the property goes up with the demand, and the rents for the property or your profit is going to go up along with that demand. So it's real simple. It's a way to basically pick winning markets based upon watching the people. So have a kid buy a condo. This is an illustration of the principle of compartmentalization. You make an investment, you assign that investment in your plan to a very specific objective, and you pick one that's important, right? So providing for a kid's college is a pretty important objective. You've got 18 years from the birth of the kid to make it work, right? And real estate is a phenomenal vehicle if you've got 18 years to work with to make a commitment, plant the seed, let it develop over time, let the investment mature as the kid matures. And the reason it worked so well for me was that I rode right through the whole housing crisis 10 years ago. While we're raising my daughter and my son, we had these investments that even though the housing market kind of went up and came down, a lot of people got scared. We didn't get spooked because it wasn't important to us what that condo was worth in 2008. It's important what it's worth in 2020, 2022. So it illustrated for me the power of having an important goal connected with the investment that I could stay committed and not change my mind, not lose confidence in the program. And by the way, the reason for a condo rather than a house was just that, you have your first kid, your hands are full, literally, and condos are hands off. And so I chose condos, and it has a nice ring to it, have a kid buy a condo, but it could be a single family investment also. Bottom line is that when you have your mind anchored to something important, and you have a long-term threshold that you're locked into, the threshold is not open-ended. It's locked in long-term. That's the kind of thing that gives you the patience to wait out the success, and you'll win.
So what happens if the condo, the time you needed to cash out was right during 2008 or whenever the market?
Okay, so if your timing was like impeccably bad, that your kid was going off to college right at the point when the market crashed like it did last time around. Two things. If you bought that condo in the year 1990 and now it's 2008 and she or he are going to college, you still won. Like you paid 80 grand for that condo, it's now worth 260. I mean, that was a long period of time. It's actually a great illustration, but if the point of your question is what happens if the timing's not right, and the answer is you hold on to it. See, the beauty of rental property is that you're generating income every month, right? So if something doesn't go according to plan, let's say your kid doesn't want to go to college. Okay, now what do? You don't have to cash out the investment, or there's always the ability to take a student loan and pay it off later on with the property. The point is you're building up an asset that whatever you decide to do in 18 years with the equity created by that asset, that's up to you. You know, the original plan of it being a college fund is what hooked you into an 18-year hold period, and that's the magic in it right there.
Okay, so BRRR is buy, renovate, rent out, refinance, and repeat, right? You know, if you own a home that you've allowed to deteriorate, or you inherit a home that's been vacant for a while, there's a lot of examples of where the person who owns the house is not in a distressed situation. They just have a property that needs to have money put into it, because whenever they bring a realtor in and say, okay, what's my house worth? They say, oh, your house would be worth $200,000 if you fix the kitchen, update the bathrooms, and do a new roof. And they say, well, I'm not doing any of that, or I don't have the money to do any of that. Well, then you're going to sell it for a discount. But it isn't just the $200,000 value of the house minus the cost of the roof, minus the cost of the kitchen, and minus the cost of the bathroom. It's also minus a discount for doing the work. And so then you're buying a property at a price that is lower than market value, and you get some extra equity for the trouble. Then you rent it out. So now you've got a perfect condition house generating income, and then you can refinance. And so if that house, you bought it for, let's say, 150, you put 30 grand in, so you're in for 180, it's worth 200. So now you've got a $200,000 house where you manufactured 20 grand worth of equity in there for having done the renovation. Now you refinance. You go to the bank, you show them the lease, you show them the property, they do an appraisal, and you pull out 100 grand and you go do it again. That's the last R, the repeat. And you could basically take, I like the term velocity of money, is you take your money and you get it working for you in terms of creating value by buying a property that needs work. You then create equity in that process. Then you pull the money back out again. Now you've got a unit that you own. You haven't flipped it. That's the key. It's not BRRR sell, okay? It's BRR refinance and repeat. So you pull the money back out, all right? And then you put it into another property. And if you can take that same $200,000 that you had saved and roll it into the BRRR strategy maybe 3 times, you wind up with 3 properties with tenants in place, paying the mortgages, and you've got the beginnings of a really fabulous portfolio.
A question I've gotten for years from small investors who are like, okay, I live in New York. I want to start investing in real estate, but the real estate in New York is so expensive. Where should I go? So where do you plan on retiring? Florida. Common answer, right? Why don't you buy a piece of real estate in Florida in the town you think you want to end up at? Buy a year-round rental that you're going to generate a good income. You go down there every year or 2 for vacation. That means you can go and see the place that you own, right? Over the next 15 or 20 years, you pay that mortgage down. All the profit you make, you sock it into that mortgage, pound that thing down. The objective is simple. In 15 or 20 years, you want to move to that area. How cool is it to know that all along that entire time, you've got your seed planted down there and it's growing. You convert that piece of real estate investment, then either you move into it or you convert that into your dream place of where you're going to live out your final destination, your twilight years.